More on the Secret Service, iMessage, and encryption. This is MacVoices. Today's MacVoices is supported by MacVoices After Dark. Uncensored, off-topic, and always off the wall. MacVoices After Dark is available as a benefit to our Patreon subscribers. Sign up at patreon.com/MacVoices. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. When we last left the MacVoices Live panel, we were in the midst of an intense discussion about the Secret Service and whether or not they lost messages, text messages, because of iMessage's encryption. Let's go back and let the panel finish up and do the talking.
Yeah. So David or Warren, since you're both familiar with Jamf, what level of privileges do you have to have in order to maybe just, if you wanted to be a bad apple and surreptitiously not back up or delete backups? You have to remove how many levels of
you'd have to remove your profile.
How many levels of of power and root access do you have in that software?
Most users will not have administrative access to a Jamf to a point where they can remove profiles. That applies to a Mac, that applies to an iPhone, an iPad. If it's being managed by an MDM, and that doesn't even necessarily mean it has to be Jamf. It could be any MDM.
The serial numbers are tied to the
they're tied. It's Apple Business
the serial
Manager.
numbers tied to the MDM, which as soon as, and I've seen it happen too, and it's pain in the ass, but when you boot up a phone, after wiping it clean, it automatically starts talking to the MDM first and says, we're downloading a corporate profile.
And that's right over again. Yep,
so in terms of protect the device, policy and enforcement of policy, is this something somebody on the client side can do, or is it something only?
No, it's an administrator.
Administrator. IT administrator.
Which gets dictation from
so he or she,
somebody else.
So if he or she was a bad apple, then
there's nothing they could do. They could smash their phone.
They can smash it, or they can erase it. I mean, that's
Actually, I don't even think you can on an MDM. I don't.
Yeah, unless they enforce a policy. If they had, they can enforce a policy. They can enforce a policy to say, "Hey, erase this." I mean,
right.
And most companies have that ability. If a device is lost or stolen, you can enforce it, and that device becomes a brick.
No, I'm saying I don't think the user could. I don't know if a user.
No, the user can't. No. That's the whole point.
You can sort of try it, but it's
Okay, no, wait a minute, guys. You're both going back and forth, and it's getting a little crazy. So let me make sure I understand this. So that if my phone has MDM on it for my company,
right,
and I reset my phone, I wipe my phone,
right,
I cannot. Are you saying that I cannot successfully remove the MDM software from it?
If it's your personal device, it all depends on the power, or if it's a company-owned device.
Well, it's a device. I mean. I'm not sure who
it's a company device.
Okay,
right.
Well, one at a time, guys.
If it's a company device, it's going to be tied to a serial number, which means when you reboot it, it doesn't even ask you to log in. It's just going to start going through an MDM initialization. If it's a personal BYOB device, they say, hey, Chuck, here's a link. Click this link. It's going to ask you to do something. You can install a profile. You can reboot. At that point, if it's your own personal phone, you should be able to go into that profile section and remove it, and you're done.
Right.
But it
depends on the phone.
I hear what you're saying about being tied to the serial number. But if I wipe my device, and this is where I think the article does a bit of a disservice, because it says instead individuals would have to remember to manually back up their devices before their phones were reset. Evidently, many agents failed to do so, and when their phones were wiped, all their iMessage communications.
That's stupid. I don't know what any IT organization relies on the user to do anything like that.
Right.
That's not what we do.
Okay. Stop. Okay. So in my mind, there's a difference between reset and wipe. Okay. So, but again, and I hear what you're saying about it. Yeah. Let me do this, David, then go. I hear what you're saying about being, tied to the serial number. But if I wipe my phone, I'm using the term wipe because I don't have a better one. But if I wipe my phone, doesn't that mean I've taken everything off of it completely?
You have. I guess we have to clear up the matter of the fact is it your device or if it's the company owned or government owned device? Most companies who own their devices, in this case, this is an iPhone. There are companies that have fleets of iPhones. They're registered with Apple Business Manager. Apple Business Manager in turn manages the serial number. That information from Apple Business Manager is then given off to the particular MDM that company is using. In this case, would be Jamf. And Jamf in turn enforces the policy. So you could wipe the phone into your heart's content, but the problem is once you turn the phone on, it sees that it's an owned phone by that particular company or that particular government, that it's going to completely boot back up and it's going to just start installing the profile and restoring the phone right the way it was.
So so I think I'm getting it. All right, but I want to be sure.
Yeah,
so it communicates to Apple. So my serial number is 12345.
Right.
Just like a really good password. All right. So it checks with Apple before it starts downloading the software.
Kinda.
I don't know
Apple-
where it goes first. It goes, it checks the activation server for Apple first,
Right.
maybe. And then it
It's
might hit
Apple
your
Business
Jamf.
Manager.
Yeah, then you'll hit your MDM. So once you get internet service on that phone, and I've been in cases where we've turned on, and Dave, I'm sure too, have turned on phones and turned on airplane mode as soon as humanly possible, so it doesn't start doing something. Because
you
as
can
soon
do
as
that.
it goes onto the internet, then it's going to start doing.
It's going to start installing the policy
and provisions and things like that.
Yeah.
So it's going to talk to, again, if it's your phone and you bought it, and Apple's didn't go through an Apple Business Manager and through Jamf, like Dave was saying,
Right.
you could wipe it. You could not only wipe it, but you could remove the actual profile, same on your Mac,
Right.
under profiles and delete it. And then, it'll be gone. And in fact, we get a lot of people in the forums and Facebook, things like that. It's I have a phone and it's not letting me do this, or it's saying it's owned by this. And 100 times out of 100, you go into profiles and see old companies or schools profile that was installed on there. And then you just have to delete it out.
And we're speculating the fact that the government, if the government is the government doing a full out MDM. Microsoft has an MDM, but Microsoft also can provide security where they can install the particular applications like an Outlook or Word, Excel, Edge, whatever.
We'll
And
move into that one next week. Dave.
yeah, Intune is the other part of it.
Intune.
Not everybody's using Intune.
Yeah.
Intune is a portal that does the same thing, but the thing in the way Microsoft does it only enforces the policy based on the systems that they want you to access. In this case, anything Microsoft related, which would be like Outlook specifically, but there could be other resources that are accessed too. But it doesn't secure the entire device.
The long and short, I'm sorry, the long and short, we're going too far, but the long and short is if the IT department at the government agency that we're talking about did their job right,
Exactly.
there should have been no reason to rely on any human to do any kind of backup or sync. That's not how that works when you want to back up devices. If the IT department was run by rabbits and hamsters, then maybe not.
Exactly.
Who knows?
And
But-
essentially, this story is that IT department saying, we didn't do our job.
Pretty much.
Well, and now people are mad because, hey, stupid, here's a law. And they said
Right.
like yesterday and today that says you
Yeah,
have to
and-
keep this information for 2 years and you didn't do this. So now what do you do? Now you just fight about it, I guess, at this point.
Okay, so clear this part up for us. However, iMessage is stored on a device in an encrypted fashion in a manner that the centralized system cannot access. So does that mean
They're
literally
lying.
what it says?
They're lying.
There you go.
Well,
You
Yeah,
could do it. You could do an iCloud backup on your phone and then download iMazing without a phone. You could take that phone and chuck it into the lake and then download iMazing and log into iMazing, and you could read those messages because it's doing the encryption sync with each other, right?
So
Because
Chuck,
that's what it's doing.
the encrypted part there, it means that you have to have the encryption keys, and in the case of a company, that's all part of an iCloud account setup. So you have company accounts, and that means that the companies ultimately have the keys. So you remember the San Bernardino case?
Right.
The reason that they couldn't get into the phone was because they allowed someone to set up the phone outside of the company's accounts, and so the company didn't have access to the encryption keys for the content on that phone. But when a company sets all of this up correctly, all these devices are using the company accounts. And so that means that even though your text messages are encrypted with other iMessage users, that ultimately, if the company wants to read the content of all those messages, they can.
Okay, thank you, Jeff, because that's kind of what I was getting to, because this article, at least the way I read it, I think it implies that even if those iMessages had been backed up to whatever system, Jamf or anybody else, that they were still pardon me, they were still encrypted and therefore couldn't be accessed. And you're saying, you were all saying that the IT departments didn't set this up correctly, because otherwise, those messages would have been backed up automatically with no intervention by the agents, and B, they would have had the keys to read the encryption because the phones were owned by the Secret Service.
The keys happen when you log into something with an iCloud account, is where the keys happen. It's not like a thing that's somewhere. As I said, you can install iMazing on your computer and not have your phone and pull your iMessage history out of a backup from an iPhone, because it's encrypting. You're logging in with your iCloud account, unlocking the encrypted passage, and you're pulling that data out.
Dave,
Presumably, they're not backing up these phones to personal Macs.
They're definitely.
Yeah.
I would have to imagine they're not. That's kind of crazy.
But Dave, is Warren saying it right? Because
The point is that the government owns the login information, not these agents.
Right.
So the government can get in.
So the government,
the point of encryption is if you have the login, you can get into it. Otherwise, it's not encryption. It's trash.
But the other part of really fast, the problem with Apple IDs is it's hard for any corporation to assign everybody an Apple ID for their personal device for business use. And we've stopped doing it. I haven't worked for a company in a while that's done it. Everybody seems to be logging in with either their own iCloud account or their own, or one that, we'll say, go on your computer, create a BLDR work email address, create an iCloud account that way. Technically, it's still yours. I don't think Jamf or any MDM actually says your user one iCloud account. So that's the real problem. You're basically giving, even though it's a company phone and MDM'd, your iCloud is not your company's iCloud, because you created the email address. Apple doesn't let you. You created the email address. You created the password. You turned on iCloud Sync. That's under your control. So
right.
Apple, but certainly Secret Service agents are not allowed to communicate using a personal account, right?
You would think
they must have some kind of business account, but they must have a business iCloud account that was created.
But
if they created another account and are using that
they're probably using their work email. Jeff at the CDC, whatever they are, .gov. Yeah, they're using that as their iCloud account, and that's probably what they're doing.
If they allow it.
Because otherwise, you're keeping a list of everybody's iCloud information for the company, and I don't think anybody's successful.
But again, you can imagine a situation, if, and I'm not disputing anybody, this is purely hypothetical. If there were a couple bad apples, they could say, "Oh, well, the way you beat security is, you get an Apple account and you set up your phone and you do it like this. We and everybody else, this is how we do it, and by doing this, it's going to circumvent, the system that the bean counter is set up, and we can communicate with each other in complete privacy. And when the phone is wiped, they can't get at any of the stuff because they don't have the information they need that's stored in our personal account."
But Jamf gives you reports. Dave will look at his Jamf report and say, Mark's phone hasn't done blah, blah, blah in the past day. He turned something off or he did something. And that's how he knows that you're doing something wrong.
Okay, guys.
It will tell you.
I'm going to need to leave.
Mark needs to jump. And I have two more questions on this issue. So Mark, thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate, all the comments.
Well, I'll jump. I have still, about 3 minutes. I'll just stay for the last two questions and then I'll jump.
Okay. Well, you know how this group goes, Mark. So
It
we'll
could go
see how it
longer.
goes.
So
Okay, if not,
yeah.
then I'll jump off at 6:30.
Webb brings up I know he's being a little flip, but not completely. Do we think the Secret Service uses an off-the-shelf iPhone?
I doubt it.
I would kind of
Sure,
doubt
of course
it too.
they do.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, it's off the shelf. That they get it from Apple, but
yeah, it's a standard iPhone. Yes, it's a normal iPhone that was provisioned through Apple Business, like Dave said.
Yeah.
Through a
Okay.
government contract.
So second question, and Dave, I'm pointing this to you because you have it in your company. So if you use an MDM system and the iPhone encrypts iMessages that your employees might use, you can access those. Not only can you access those messages through the backup to the server, but you can read those messages, correct?
you could. In my case, we don't back that stuff up. It all depends on how the MDM is configured.
Okay.
But it's still encrypted. There's a fine line. I haven't had any experience with the MDM portion of it managing iMessage, and I'm not sure what companies do. If it's a full-out device, I have not heard of. I mean, maybe Warren can ask to think it. I really don't think.
I don't think it
backs
up. I don't think it backs up anything to the MDM. I think it's still backing everything up to Apple. But
That's all part of the company managed Apple IDs, independent of individual user Apple IDs.
I don't think any Apple devices are backing up to a corporate
No, they're not.
device. I think every Apple device is,
but
unless it's a
it's corporate Apple IDs. So
no, we
so
talked
the
about
company
that.
still
There's no such thing as a corporate Apple ID. It doesn't exist.
This edition of MacVoices is supported by our Patreon subscribers and MacVoices After Dark. Ever wonder what happens before the MacVoices live shows? Or what happens when the show ends? Or after the live feed closes? That's where MacVoices After Dark comes in. If you are a Patreon supporter at any level, you get access to the video of our off-camera conversations. Uncensored, unedited, and always off the wall. It's a small thank you to our Patreon supporters who want to peek behind the curtain. Become a Patreon subscriber at patreon.com/MacVoices. And thanks to everyone who supports the show.
What about the schools that have school managed Apple IDs?
They're not in the iClouds. And that's how they get around that. At least that's what they were doing when I worked at a school. Is they said, we're not logging all these things into an iCloud. We're managing all the MDMs. And basically, as soon as it goes back in that big rack thing, it sends a wipe and resets itself to how it was yesterday.
Well, maybe look at this backwards. If this story is true, then essentially iPhones, or at least iMessage, is completely inappropriate for use in any public company or in any government agency that has retention requirements.
Maybe.
And
I mean, that might
I don't
be true.
see a reaction that, oh yeah, of course, everyone knows you can't use iPhones and iMessage in those situations.
But see, that's funny, Jim, because I took the opposite message from it. It's like, gee, this is so secure that, if the proper thing wasn't done, then those messages are irrecoverable. And so the security is that much better.
The law in this case is the messages must be retained for 2 years. So if the system isn't designed in a way that can be mandated, and then it's not suitable. Which maybe that's true, but I certainly don't see the response to the story being, yeah, duh, everybody knows you can't use iPhones. I think, these systems, these MDM systems and whatnot, they're designed for exactly this situation, because organizations do have policies that, we don't let individual users run around and screw up our policies. We impose our policies on the devices, not the end users do.
And to answer Chuck's question is, yeah, the company would love you not to use iMessage for communication. They want you to use their systems that they can monitor and see what's going on, like Teams or whatever they're using in their internal communication. Because, because when you get a call from the CIO saying, what did Sally say to Mark in iMessage, you're going to look at Mark and you're going to look at the CIO and say, I don't know, I can't tell you. And then he's going to look at you and say, why not? because, and you can explain what we just explained, because we don't control it and we have no, we have no visibility of it. As an end user, you might feel great about that, but as a company, you don't.
And
Well, then iMessage should be banned in all these situations. Why has this not come up?
well, there's an alternate. Yeah, thanks, Jeff. You just beat me to that with the business manager, manage IDs. I was going to just make a comment on that. That's what a lot of companies are looking to do now. It's having managed Apple IDs and using their company's domain in order to have a managed Apple ID. Because some companies are saying, okay, yeah, you've signed up, because that's the thing. People think that their business email address is their personal account, and they sign up for an Apple ID with their company email, and they use it for personal, which is crazy.
Which is crazy.
It happens all
even
the
with
time.
this article, how does Apple monitor what you're doing here? How do they have any more control than if you just created an Apple ID on your own?
Yeah, and that's where that support article that Jeff put in our private chat talks about business manager, Apple Business Manager, that also manages Apple IDs.
And this is new, right? This is something they introduced with that new service.
Yeah, with Apple School
Recently.
Manager and it's also Apple
not the
Business
school
Manager.
The
Both.
business manager, which just came out not
Both.
that long ago. So this
Yeah,
is
both.
something that, right? Because Apple hears this stuff all the time. It's like, Apple, the companies would love to have their devices fully managed by the company, and as it is right now, it's not quite like that. But Apple's trying, per Jeff's link.
Yeah, and I just threw those links in the show notes. Excuse me, they'll be in the show notes. I just threw them in the chat rooms as well. So, so I'm going to break my rule. I'm going to ask one last question because
please.
the one thing that kind of surprised me, based on everything I've learned here tonight, and I hope everyone else has learned some things. I'm a little surprised that, short of somebody running over an iPhone with a steamroller, that if I go to wipe a phone that is on one of these management systems, or reset it, or I'm taking the article in the verbiage in the article, that it doesn't say stop. I need to back this up first.
No,
it doesn't. It doesn't.
So.
Why wouldn't it? I mean, if I have, in this situation, if I have important corporate or government or school information, and I'm about to be wiped, why wouldn't
it? Does. Apple does. When you sign up your iCloud account, the first thing it does, it asks you, "Do you want to back this up?" Doesn't
no, Warren. Not
Chuck.
Forget iCloud. I'm talking about through the MDM.
Chuck, the type of data that we're talking about for these types of devices, even if it's on the phone, that's not the place it really lives, because we're talking about corporate enterprise level services that are cloud based, and that's where the data really lives. So if you nuke a phone and you lose the data on the phone, you're only losing it from the phone, because it's really living somewhere else, and the phone is just accessing it when you use whatever company apps are installed on that device through the MDM.
With the exception of the encrypted, with the exception of what Chuck's saying, which is the iMessage, that falls out of the realm of what can be accessed.
It's on servers though. All you got to do is log back in without account.
Right, and that's kind of where I'm going with this, Jim. At the end of the day, how did messages, how are messages only stored on a phone if they're iMessages? If they pass through somebody's system, Apple's or somebody else's, and so there should be copies of them there.
Well, if they have iCloud, iMessage in a cloud, they're in the cloud, right? So if you steamroller your phone and logged onto your computer and turned on iMessage in the cloud, you'll see all your past messages in iMessage. So they're there.
Yeah, because we've all done that with new phones. You get a new
but
phone.
MDMs don't back up. That's what I don't think MDMs actually back up data. They push out things to do, which might include telling your phone to back up to the iCloud, but they don't actually. Dave doesn't have your MDM server doesn't have a storage area of people's backups, right?
That's because it's their own device. So I mean, we aren't going to back up on BYOD.
Right. Well, even if not, I mean, Jamf doesn't have a repository of backups of people's phones. Apple
Same thing with Macs. They don't back up the Macs either.
No, it backs
you
up.
You got to something else, like in our case, OneDrive. Yeah, that's how
for
you
that.
back up.
Right. Yeah. But for iPhones, in your case, it's going to be iCloud. And that's what you're doing.
Well,
Jeff
it
is
has to
telling
be.
you, right. It has to be. Well, it doesn't have to be. It could also,
Well, it could be
there's
also
other,
other
yeah,
methods.
but yeah. You could actually put NAS stuff on an iPhone and all stupid stuff.
It's a deep,
I
it's a
don't
deep, it's a deep topic, Struck.
Listen, it is. And, I mean, I'm not sure we haven't asked more questions than we've answered here, and we're over time. So we're going to need to wrap it up. But I think it is important, and especially when you see things like this, because you look at it and you have to wonder, okay, I'm going to be dramatic, right? Are these rogue agents that decided, we don't want anybody to see this, so we're wiping our phones? Or is this an IT department that wasn't doing their job and didn't do it right? Or was an MDM, whoever's MDM it was, either A, not capable, or that's not a feature set that exists, or was it not set up properly? So we don't have answers to those questions, but
I think it's the last one. And I don't think they're rogues. I think probably most of them said, forget I was even here. Let's forget this day happened. And here, take my phone and please erase it like fast because I was never here. And and at some point, somebody in that organization just said, hey, wait, this is January 6th and this was on the news again. This is a pretty important date. He literally said, do not back up this device on this important date of history is a problem that they were having. Because basically they were saying, I'm sure these guys were frantic and scared. And everybody said, take my phone. We don't work for this guy anymore. I was never here. Wipe it. And they did. And somebody should have said, don't do that. And that's what happened.
Yeah. I don't know. It's an interesting article. And I want to make sure that, folks aren't being misled. I don't want to be misled. I would like to know.
Oh, absolutely. Especially as our government.
Yeah.
Our government never misleads us. So
No.
Well, and in relation to, things that we do and exactly, because we've heard so much, and Apple has taken so much heat for, having encryption that can't be broken or can be extremely, extremely difficult to be broken. And they've taken the position, pardon me, they've taken a position that they aren't going to help break it. And so, yeah, I think somewhere in the midst here, we have to understand just, where the barriers are and
this place would be using BlackBerry server if it still existed. A lot of places would be for exactly 100%.
He's right.
This reason.
Because they controlled the server.
Apple has not pushed into the business world until very recently, specifically because of this, because they do not offer control to the corporation, the government, to do what they need to do with this stuff. And Apple's finally saying, per these links, okay, let's try to figure this out. And, historically, companies would not, an iPhone is a terrible thing to manage in a corporate environment. It still is. I mean, and that's why everybody's BYOD at this point, because it's hard.
Yeah.
It's really entertaining to read the comments on this 9 to 5 article. There are 57 comments, which they've now closed, and every single one of them is along the lines of the first one, which is, this excuse is about as lame as it gets.
Somebody definitely didn't do their job.
And it's very entertaining to, read all of them. Every single person is like, this is baloney.
This government was trying to get out of America really fast on January 6th, and people did very quick thinking things that they shouldn't have done. 100%. And is it malicious? Is it illegal? That's kind of, we'll find out.
Yeah, well, we weren't there, and I'm not prepared to make comments about that because that's starting to get into the politics of the situation. I'm talking more the technical aspects. So,
right.
So with that, let's go around the horn, let folks know where they can find you, and then we'll have a private political debate after the show. Jim Ray, thanks so much for being here. What's the best place for people to connect with you?
You can reach me at my birthday party or at provi.com or ProviGem on Twitter.
Is today your birthday?
Coming up. Not today, but it will be before next week. It'll be my
birthday. Well, happy birthday. A few days early. Okay, everybody sing. No, please don't.
Happy birthday. It's Jim's birthday. Happy birthday to Jim.
Underpants.
There you go.
There goes the end.
I'm so sorry about that, Jim.
Oh, don't do it, Warren.
Oh, Warren, put that down.
Why are you stopping him?
Because it's Warren. That's why.
Yeah. Don't encourage him.
Dave Ginsburg, thank you so much for being here and enlightening us. What's the best way for people to connect with you?
Yes, you can find me at In Touch with iOS at intouchwithios.com, the YouTube channel, youtube.com/intouchwithios. Find me on the Mac Show on the British Tech Network on Fridays and here on Tuesdays, and recording our show on Thursday nights. And you can find me on Twitter at DaveG65.
Great. Thanks so much, Dave.
Thank you.
Warren, I'm glad you felt well enough to argue with us as strongly as you did.
It woke me up.
You look healthier than you did at the top of the show.
Yeah.
I've been sleeping for the last 3 days.
You're pinking up.
This is a night. Yeah.
MacVoices is the cure for COVID.
Yeah, my wife said I'm even getting my color back. So, yeah, well, I'm still in lockdown. I'll see if I test negative the next day or two, and then maybe I'll head out again. But other than that, I'm still in the basement.
Good. Well, where can we find you when you're not in the basement?
Yeah, I did. Don't go near me. I'm a COVID magnet. Stay away from me. Don't look for me. Dave, hopefully I'll be good for Thursday. With Dave on Thursday and here, and Facebook. I've been quiet because I've been half dead, but I'll get back on there today or tomorrow. And thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Okay. Last but absolutely not least, the crooner himself, Mr. Jeff Gamet. Where can folks find you?
Well, when I'm not singing happy birthday songs that I make up on the fly to Jim, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram, JGamet on both, youtube.com/JGamet for occasional videos, here with all of you on Tuesdays, Thursdays, In Touch with iOS with Dave, because Dave and Warren keep letting me come back. It's crazy.
It's in
crazy.
the contracts.
The Big Show on Thursdays, the Mac Show on Fridays, and the Context Machine with Brian Chaffin, because we can't get enough of each other. And then around, I kind of get around. I'm easy to find.
Great. Thanks so much, Jeff. Definitely thank you to the chat room. Really appreciate your contributions and all and your comments. Did you know that Webb Bixby owns a Rolls Royce?
Not.
Yeah.
Man, he's a big roller.
Or at least that's what he implied, or at least that's what I took. And Webb will be contradicting that any second now, I'm sure, in the chat. Yeah, no, I know, Webb. You don't have a Rolls. I get it. This is MacVoices Live. We do this kind of craziness every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. I'm a little spaced out myself. Whatever time that is, wherever you are, we'd love to have you join us in the chat room at youtube.com/MacVoicesTV. Set your alarm. We'll be there next time. Webb says not true. Yeah, I know. Oh, check my email. Okay. I've got email from Webb.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's already backed up through the MDM configuration profile.
Yeah.
So Webb, your secret is out. Whatever it is. Thanks everyone for being here. We will see you next time. And until then, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you MacVoices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.